the seabed, 54% of the ocean, is common good of the whole humanity. So I feel, and I carry on my shoulders with a lot of pride and commitment, that this is the purpose of my presence here as a leader. So I'm not going to anywhere. I'm here to deliver.
Hello, and welcome to the Scientista podcast, where women and science rule. This podcast is all about supporting powerful women who lead with their brains. I'm former Assistant Secretary of State Monica Medina, and I'm sorry to say that we don't have Shata Chakrabarti, my co-host, with us today, but we're going to power on through because that's what she would want us to do. The Scientista podcast brings you conversations with leaders, change makers, and cultural figures, sharing how they are turning facts and evidence into real-world impact. So let's dive in. Today we have with us a fascinating and really important guest. Her name is Leticia Carvalho, and at the beginning of this year, she assumed office as the 4th Secretary General of the International Seabed Authority. Her appointment marks a new chapter in the ISA's leadership and in its work. This is a challenging role that you've taken on this year after more than a decade of work. Maybe it's more than that. You'll tell us in a minute, of work to try to develop seabed mining regulations, which couldn't be more important as we try to protect the sea from all kinds of other harms, pollution, and the like. So tell us a little bit about the International Seabed Authority and the law of the sea. What is it? What is that? What does your organization do? How does it fit into this broader umbrella of law in the ocean, which, let's just start by saying, belongs to no one in the areas 200 miles and farther out?
Monica, this is a fantastic framework, I would say, almost a constitution that's called by some, that's called the law of the sea. And the law of the sea regulates a number of human activities and access and management in this vastness of the planet that we call ocean, that is actually bigger than land. The International Seabed Authority is one of these entities created by the law of the sea in 1992, and particularly it came into life and was enforced through Chapter 11. That is a particular agreement that was adopted and enforced in 1994. So this particular chapter that deals with the International Seabed Authority creates the organizational structure and also the foundations, the values, the principles that the seabed should be treated by humans. So the first and fundamental element that creates the uniqueness of this organization, the International Seabed Authority, and its mandate, is that the ocean is a common good, meaning that all the area, all the seabed, to be precise and accurate, the seabed is a global common good, meaning that belongs to all and everybody. So the seabed outside of national jurisdiction, and it's an interesting negative but positive concept that says that all the seabed that's outside of the jurisdiction of countries is a common good that belongs to the whole humanity. And the International Seabed Authority is the custodian, is the steward of this. Its mandate is actually to control and manage activities in the deep seabed beyond national jurisdiction, as I said, so outside of the sovereignty of national or countries and nations. And so what we are doing here, precisely these 2 weeks, this week we are, and the next one, is to making progress in developing a regulatory framework for exploitation. ISA is now developing regulations to rule the commercial exploitation or commercial use or exploitation of the seabed minerals. And in doing so, we carry on another very important mandate, or two very important mandates. We have to do and create in a way that creates no harm to the environment, so protecting the environment, taking in consideration the precautionary principle that says that how we approach uncertainty, and there are a number of uncertainties about this area of the ocean, and also having a framework that grants equity, meaning benefit sharing of potential commercial use or knowledge coming from the efforts of the exploitation and exploration should be shared with all humanity and all developing countries, particularly as a major goal.
That's such an important point. And let me say, you made so many important points in that answer. It was so amazing. The first one is that the ocean beyond national jurisdictions, the high seas, is 50% of the planet. It's huge. The second thing you talked about was the fact that it's been a process of developing these regulations in order to benefit everyone, because those areas don't belong to any one country, and we've, as a planet, as a group of countries, many, most, not the US, but many, have agreed that what is developed in those areas belongs to everyone. And so everyone needs to abide by this constitution of the ocean, the law of the sea, and now these rules governing seabed mining. And we'll get into what happens if you're a country like the US and you haven't agreed. But let's put that to the side for the minute. And then thinking about the precautionary principle, what you said about why it's important to be careful in making these regulations and protective, because not only does it belong to everyone, these areas and those mineral resources, until permits are granted and all of that, but what happens in one place in the ocean doesn't stay put, as we've seen from plastic pollution and other kinds of ocean pollution, oil spills and the like. The environmental harms can move great distances, unlike mining on land, say. So there's a lot of complication involved in the work that you're doing now, and it requires precision and care and engineering and technology and science, and some of it we haven't even developed yet. Another thing we'll talk about in a minute. So I want to focus in on you because you're such an interesting person in such an interesting place at this moment, and you were only just now elected. Now, the critics of the International Seabed Authority have tried to criticize you because of the Seabed Authority's long time developing these regulations. But you only just took over. So talk about what happened last year and why the countries of the world who are participating in the Seabed Authority elected you to be in this role now.
Monica, my reading of this is member states elected me because they were looking to enhance transparency, accountability, and inclusivity. And I think this is what they had in mind when they were looking for a change. I might also allude to some procedural aspects that for running this organization, the leadership is envisaged to stay for one tenure of 4 years and might be elected or re-elected or reconducted for another tenure of 4 years. So my predecessor already has accomplished 4 or 8 years. So therefore, there was time for change. But it's interesting that this particular element of the leadership that was in place last year was due, as per the best practices in the international system, to rotate to different regions, to give space for others and other leadership's approaches to come in. Also converges with a strong push for a change in the way multilateralism and multilateral organizations are managed. So I would say these pillars, transparency, accountability, inclusivity, being an honest broker, and this is the experience and the value I bring, together with my, of course, background training. Being a scientist helps me to understand and dialogue with a broader and wider group of stakeholders. But I think the fundamental value is the expectation that under my leadership, these three pillars and values that actually resume the integrity of of an organization would be carried out with a strong push. So I definitely see myself in my experience that brings a former regulatory frameworks as you mentioned, as you
Yep,
introduced me.
you
Yes,
are.
that's where I can add a value, and I believe that this was what drove, was the driving force behind my election. That was, by the way, overwhelming election.
Well, you're
uh,
quite humble because it was an overwhelming election, and you only mentioned that at the end, but you were overwhelmingly elected, which is quite a testament to your own background and to your credibility and your integrity. Because I think people were losing faith in the system and the governance structure and frankly, the leadership before. And I'll say that from the outside, that people felt like it was time to change, and that's why those rules are in place about making changes and term limits, if you will. So talk about you've mentioned your varied background from working in the UN Environment Program, which is all about conservation and environmental values and protecting resources, and at the same time your oceanography background, and earlier in your career, you worked for the oil and gas industry in Brazil. And we know they have an offshore oil and gas industry that is quite important to the economy and also really valuable. It's really important there because of their big coastline and the importance of oceans in the country to be protective. So talk about your experience balancing these things. You talked about precaution before, which is a buzzword in the environmental world about taking care and not doing anything too risky before we know the impacts. Talk about how you think about this balance as you're working hard to come up with these regulations.
Monica, I'll pick up on your word, not to be too risky. And this is really where everything sits. Because reality is what we do as regulators is actually to strike the balance. And this balance needs a number of inputs, of course, best science available, best practices that are already being benchmarking or serving as benchmarking from other different industries. But similarly, and we can say mining, it's almost a nascent activity, human activity,
It's
happens on
new.
land as well.
It's brand new in the ocean.
Yes, absolutely. And of course, we have all the challenges and the novelties of the very specific aspect that, as you have said, 54% of the ocean is seabed. And therefore, this deep seabed that you were talking about that belongs to all and everybody, so needs to be
And how deep?
carefully
Let's help people
managed.
understand. We're talking really deep.
Yes, and then there is the challenge of course, what is the technology and the understanding and the level of knowledge that we have, and what is the technology that can deliver uh, environmental protection in, for example, 10,000 that can deliver yes, protection at the depths of 10,000 meters depth. So this is a challenge, I would say, in the sense that as much as it can be managed, and then managing is a fundamental word, because some people claim that we don't have all the knowledge available, or all the knowledge necessary, available for this endeavor. And I think it's very clear, it's a consensus. I mean, there are lots of knowledge gaps, as we are saying. These are 2,000, or these are 12,000 meters depth, and technology is not trivial to reach these places. Needless to say that in developing this in a way that you create no harm. But this concept of no harm, it's actually a management concept. So we will balance risks. And this is precisely where the precautionary approach comes in, because based on the best knowledge we have at this moment, in managing the situation, acknowledging that we don't know everything, we need to apply the precautionary approach. And this is how we strike a balance, probably using approaches used in other industries that are harmful, potentially harmful, extrapolation or imagine having the risk extrapolated as a first approach, and of course learning by practice. If what we have imagined, it's really delivering the protection we look forward. So at this point in time, I would say the authority has done meaningful progress on 4 stressors that are the ones that the scientists have told us, to the member states and the community of science, are looking forward at being are going to be the most harmful in case exploitation commences. And these are noise, light, turbidity, and toxicity. So we have made meaningful progress in this particular meeting with scientists from the bodies of the authority, counting on also independent scientists' expertise that were called upon to be part of the discussions on how to set thresholds or minimum levels of tolerance of risks regarding these 4 stressors. Big progress was also made with the understanding that it's not only the source of a stressor that's important, but also the impact of these stressors in a holistic manner to be seen in the ecosystem itself. So I'm very confident that this part of the work that's under the command of the scientists to recommend to the council, and the fact that we have scientists nominated by the member states under what we call legal and technical commission, that's a subsidiary body of the council, but also external scientists, and the fantastic contribution of the civil society, overall academia, that is constantly part of our stakeholders to support in this endeavor. Finding levels of tolerance for these particular stressors that are the ones that are the most concerning, and looking forward for creating management approaches and schemes that can help, based on the principle of the precaution, create the opportunity for learning by doing and adjusting. So it's a matter of adaptive management and managing uncertainty, and of course, considering the circumstances of the uniqueness of this space and the uniqueness of the ownership of this space, we will apply, I believe that's the way the authority was set up for, and I have a full belief in that. We will apply the elements of precaution that can create the breaks, the necessary potential breaks in case harm gets out of the tolerance based on the knowledge that we have nowadays. So
you
sorry
talked
to
about
speak so much, but it's a fascinating topic for
no,
me.
there's
We're
so
talking about
much
management
there.
and risk.
The science
Big
is
topics, I love.
evolving. The science is evolving. It is new. The technologies are all new. People think maybe we should have been doing this for 30 years, but you're talking about thousands and thousands of feet or meters below the sea level, the sea surface. And you're talking about new technologies that only now have made it possible to even explore those places, much less to mine them. So I think you're emphasizing that exploration is a key first step, and the ISA has already granted a lot of exploration permits so that we can learn and know more. What technology do you think is ready? Is it ready? Well, let me take a step back and say, is the technology ready yet to actually begin mining operations? And are countries doing it in their own waters? That's one of the things that the U.S. executive order our president signed unleashed here in the U.S. domestic mining, domestic ocean mining. Talk about where the technology and where the industry is right now. How close is it to being ready?
Yes, very, very interesting question. And indeed, there is technology available. I think what is the fundamental, so it's possible to do it. What the authority has that's unique, and why the collective regime is fundamental, is, of course, technology differs depending on developers in different countries. And so if anyone will go to persuade its own way to do business, yes, I can say there is technology. available, and there are countries already doing in their own jurisdiction. It's important to say that the curiosity that has driven the International Seabed Authority into research over the last 30 years has granted that outside of national jurisdiction, no mining or exploitation has happened so far. Meaning, this is very important because as we develop standards and regulations, or regulations and standards and guidelines, we are actually developing for the world the minimum benchmarking or the baseline for national jurisdiction and national capabilities to adjust to the collective understanding of harm and the collective understanding on how to prevent harm. And let's don't forget that the concept of common heritage of mankind not only encompasses the current beings living in this world, but also it's an intergenerational concept. So we are looking to preserve for the future generations that they can also benefit from the seabed. So but this in mind, I would say there is technology available, but there is no common understanding or standard about what is the technology that can deliver the less harmful impacts into the seabed. So
And let's
therefore,
talk about
the
what those
authorities.
harms are. What are those harmful impacts? Talk about what the risks are. Is it health, the marine environment? I mean, it's food, right? It's our we get a lot of food from the ocean, and we are already seeing plastic pollution everywhere. Now, the potential for mining pollution to infiltrate our food chains to and our food web, um, the disruption of ecosystems. Talk a little bit about what what the potential downside risks are that you're worried about.
Yes, and indeed you are right. I mean, I can only repeat to you. You already mentioned a number of these elements that concerns us. Health, change of behavior of animals that or biodiversity that we simply don't know, and eventually will be uh, um, destroyed before we have the chance to understand better. I think there is, together with the stressors I have mentioned, light, noise, turbidity, or blurring, or disturbing with sediments and a sediment plume, an ecosystem that's very stable. And also toxicity, the possibility of remobilizing sediments, making toxic molecules available when they were settled. All of these are big question marks and are risks. So are the downsides that we don't have full assurance yet on how deep, or how deep is it's a cliche in this case,
Right.
but how concrete and how effective they can be and how long they can affect the ecosystem. But allow me just to say, I think there is another element also that it's beyond of every different impact in every different group of species, or species in particularly, or the risk of losing the species that we don't know yet. I think also I need to shine a light on the cumulative effects in the whole ecosystem and its functionality, because bottom line, what we want to preserve it's overall that this ecosystem it's not disturbed. The deep sea uh, is not disturbed in a way that, in an holistic manner, it's transformed completely in a negative way. So we are looking into cumulative impacts as well. So all of these are risks and stressors and are elements of concern, and particularly when you are looking for the impossibility to mitigate these harms or these risks. So we look forward for a good management that can allow us to prevent and mitigate these concerns and these impacts. Technology is, yes, available. If it's available to deliver the economic benefits that players are expecting is another question mark, I would say. But let me stop here.
Okay.
We were
I think Yeah, you've made so many incredibly important points there about the need to understand how to mitigate the risk. Yes, the technology, it may be possible to actually extract the minerals, but at what cost? At what harm might be a result? And we know how harmful mining is on land. We know that it's a problem on land, and so I think that informs the kind of risks we're willing to take in the ocean where that toxicity can spread far and wide. So let me jump into an issue that I know is on the top of a lot of people's minds, which is the Trump administration and their actions to actually try to speed up mining in the high seas, not just in US waters, but in the high seas. The president has been hearing a lot from one particular company, the metals company, and it's a Canadian company on top of everything else, not even an American company. And the CEO of the metals company has been very critical of the Seabed Authority and has encouraged and successfully encouraged President Trump to issue an executive order in which he says he will issue permits in the high seas under the US's domestic law about seabed mining and the way domestic companies would be regulated for seabed mining, both in US waters and on the high seas. All that is sort of throwing a huge um, sort of bomb into the process. I don't know how else to describe it. It's shaken it up and created a lot of concern about other countries acting unilaterally as well. Tell us what you think about the risks now with the threat of unilateral action kind of overriding the constitution of the ocean. And can the US do that just because they haven't joined all the other countries of the world in the Law of the Sea convention, the Constitution?
Monica, indeed. I mean, I love your approach saying throw the bomb because it was definitely not expected that unilateral action would be a topic of discussion this year, and suddenly it became. And indeed, one particular country, US, has started or initiated this conversation when others in the same position to develop their own industry in their own uh, jurisdictional waters have been tight with International Seabed Authority in order to develop the global regime. As I have been saying and continuing to say in different forums, and I will continue to say that, any action that involves the area or literally because it's called area by the law in capitals, as you know. But for the ones that are not familiarized, I would say the seabed outside of national jurisdiction. Any country, person, company that eventually tries to circumvent the collective regime that's being developed in the International Seabed Authority will be incurring in unlawful activity. And just to give a proxy, we have illegal and unreported fisheries in the high seas. This is unlawful activity. So
Yes.
that would be very similar to it. By the way, I have serious concerns about bottle trawling, as you mentioned in the former
Thank you for
question, in the
mentioning that.
previous
Yes.
question, because there are connections with other value chains, fisheries and others. Yes, if you have toxicity that's eventually brought to contaminate fisheries and food, so you will have a number of additional chains of impacts. But I have deep concerns with other very harmful activities, as for example, bottle trawling. And I would say that when I see one country, one company pushing the system for unilateral action, I can only repeat what I have absolutely assurance based on the law and on the legal advice of many, not only in ISA, but in the system of the United Nations, as even the United Nations Secretary General has mentioned, the seabed cannot be a West Wild. a Wild West,
Wild,
sorry.
Wild West.
That
Yeah.
a wild, yes, a Wild West. What says explicitly something that the Americans know very well, because it's a term that refers part of your history, and of course we don't want that harm that have had consequences for your country, particularly for U.S. particularly, to be repeated in this very precious common space. So I would say yes. This, if any activity, as I have said before in many different places, and you will see consistency in my case, would be considered by the law of the sea and by the customary law unlawful activity. So I still have strong belief that and hopes that U.S., that has been a fantastic collaborator of the International Seabed Authority as an observer state, will continue to be tied to the regime and continue to help us to develop as currently we have U.S. delegation in the room. So it's something to celebrate. We still are connected, and I hope the U.S. administration will keep up and continue to develop as they eventually articulate the possibilities under their own regime. They won't circumvent the international law and the International Seabed Authority. This is my hope, and I will still attach to this until I be proven wrongly.
So
Be proven.
I think what you say is so wise, which is that the U.S. is playing a valuable role as an observer. We're not a member, so all we can do is sit in the back of the room and help the countries that are actually in charge. The irony here is if we ratified the Law of the Sea Convention, the U.S. would instantly be in a very preeminent leadership role in the International Seabed Authority. If we ratified that convention and the Seabed Authority, part of the convention, the U.S. has a permanent seat in governance of seabed mining. But because we refuse to do that, we are forced to sit at the back of the table and try and make unilateral actions stick in an international legal regime where they don't fit. We just don't really have the law on our side, is what I would say. And you've said it very articulately, as have lots of international lawyers in the United States said that they don't believe that the U.S. can unilaterally issue an exploitation, a mining permit on the high seas, even with our own domestic law covering it, because customary international law is clear that the Seabed Authority, your organization, governs those exploitation, those mining permits. So we always
Monica,
end. Yes, go ahead.
sorry, so just quickly, just to say that because you couldn't be more right, and I want just to stress that why my hopes. It's not because I am an optimistic person by choice, but my hopes are really founded in the strong participation, collaboration of United Nations, of the United States, as an observer, as you were saying, unfortunately not in the front seat, but this never prevented U.S. Really to be an active player. And I can only think that if the U.S. comes to the regime and signs the law of the sea and is adherent to the Constitution, what even more U.S. could bring as value and as a front runner, having your own national regulation developed to this international
Right. We could move so
community.
quickly
Yes,
domestically in the
absolutely, and
international seabed
sensitively.
if we helped you instead of trying to distract you from the good work you're doing by doing something unilateral.
Yes, so that's why my faith is based on not on desire, but actually on concrete action that U.S. has been taking over 30 years and as observer. And as you rightly said, has you have a seat at the table, so you can decide any time to come and take your seat.
That's
And I hope
that is I
this
hope we
things
will.
give me hope. Yes.
I hope we will. So let me ask you our last question because I know you have to get back to the negotiations. So we always end with what happens when you get thrown a curveball. And clearly you've been thrown a curveball, but I want to modify it this time because you've not only been thrown a curveball, but you've been personally attacked by the CEO of the metals company for, I don't even understand what his criticism is since you only just took over. It sounds like he's trying to push you to move faster because in a very sort of um, uh, intimidating way, trying to imply that as a woman, you're somehow not taking charge and you're not doing the things you need to do to lead this organization. So I want to give you a chance to say, what do you think women, what's your advice for other women who get in that situation where they're being kind of bullied um, by men? And and how
Yes.
have you dealt with this over the last few weeks and months? Because it has been pretty tough pressure on you personally.
Yes, indeed. And then thank you for creating the opportunity for me to touch on this. We women, and I know you are a tough woman that has been leading a number of different organizations and processes. You are very, I know that we have a sisterhood in that, in that experience. We share the experience. Women in leadership roles, particularly when spaces are heavily male dominated, are not easy. And the mindset, it's still very, very, how can I say, driven by the gentleman. So
Yes,
yes,
macho.
it's a novelty to have a lady sitting in the chair and sitting on the chair and promoting change. About Jared, I can only say that I attribute his perhaps abrasive approach to me, to perhaps some resentment or grievance, because I'm not giving the ears, particularly to any company. My approach as a regulator was always work towards and through institutional channels. So maybe he was used to have the ears of my predecessor or different ways to approach the authority. And my way is really based on my integrity in dealing with so many different industry sectors over my life as a professional, is that I use institutional channels. So as much as I am open and my door open, I meet with contractors, I meet with all of them in an institutional setting. So maybe this is a point that creates a certain disappointment for this particular
Right.
individual.
Well,
But
I think
that
that's,
said,
go ahead.
yes, that said, of course, there is the overall, how can I say, the overall space for women in leadership roles, especially in complex topics like this that involves, of course, private and public funding, that involves expectations in terms of values and integrity, that involves the rule of the international law. I always expected that it wouldn't be easy. So as far as I get, how can I say, I can feel that I expected everything. So nothing is exactly a surprise. And I don't necessarily need, and this is very important for me, to be like it. I need to be effective, and I need to stick into my values. And integrity, I would say, is the value that resumes what I came here to do. So in this way, I would say to all ladies in the same situation, or in the same or similar positions, you are going to be challenged. I have been heavily challenged, and even, as you say, bullied. And why people feel that this can be done with a woman, and we don't see the other way around happening so often. It's a question mark for our society. But I am absolutely blunt in, bluntly enthusiastic of my job, and I know that I have a lot of goals to score. Some of them I'm already celebrating, because this is the 6 months, and I'm here. And absolutely, I'm here, and I will deal with transparency and accountability. As I'm saying, I have nothing to. I have a very clear, transparent career. So the ones that eventually are frustrated because of my approach, I'm sure that they will find their way to be used to it, because I'm not going to change. integrity is fundamental for me. Institutional and rule of the law are elements that are core values. And in that regard, I would say be yourself to all the ladies in the same situation. And yes, I have a purpose. That's a point. I'm here to make sure that the stewardship of the seabed is put in place in a way that we delivered as the mandate we were giving. And this is a very special mandate. I will say again, the seabed, 54% of the ocean, is common common good of the whole humanity. So I feel, and I carry on my shoulders with a lot of pride and commitment, that this is the purpose of my presence here as a leader. So I'm not going to anywhere. I'm here to deliver, and I will stay the course.
That's so amazing. Leticia Carvalho, thank you so much. Scientista, such great advice in the midst of a storm when you are being personally attacked, potentially even because you are a woman. Stick to your guns. Facts, science, data, integrity. That's what will get you through the storm. That's the word from an original scientista herself, Leticia Carvalho. Thank you so much again for being with us today. And thanks to everyone out there for listening to the Scientista podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, help others discover it by leaving us a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, and tell your friends. We really appreciate your support. And you can always find us at scientistas.world for more stories, updates, and ways to get involved. Thanks again, Leticia, and good luck with your important mission.
Thank you for having me.